The exchanges in China are very competitive. For marketing purposes, I think a lot of them, possibly inflate their volume numbers.
Bobby Lee is CEO of BTC China, one of the largest Bitcoin exchanges in the world.
The story of Bitcoin China is a little complex. Certain companies are banned from trading in Bitcoin.
There's been a lot of speculation about the current state of Bitcoin in China. Mr. Lee is one of the few people that know the facts. This is Bobby Lee of BTC China.
I first learned about Bitcoin through my brother, Charles Lee. I learned about it in about 2011. So that was in spring of 2011. At the time, Bitcoin had already been about, almost two years old. I first learned about it and then started doing some Bitcoin mining. And that was more of a hobby just to see how that works. And I didn't think too much about it. By the end of 2012, I was switching jobs. I had left Walmart. I was doing a Walmart e-commerce gig in China, in Shanghai. And after that, I was trying to figure out what to do next. So that's when the thought came to my mind, I could get back into the Bitcoin and really do something with Bitcoin. And the thought came to my mind that I could, start a Bitcoin company or join one. And I decided to look up these two guys who started this Bitcoin exchange called BTC China. And soon enough, after some really good conversations, we decided to join forces and launch it into a company and get venture funding and all that. So that was in early 2013. So it's been a wild ride in terms of the price of Bitcoin and also in terms of the awareness of Bitcoin in China and globally. So when I started, I remember no one would have heard about Bitcoin. It was always my duty, my role to tell people what Bitcoin is, the fact that it's a digital currency. The Chinese people, they really like to hear about new investment opportunities. So Bitcoin presented itself as a viable investment opportunity, as a scarce and limited asset class that is also decentralized. So that was very much very appealing for the Chinese audience. So that's what happened in 2013 when the Chinese consumers got into Bitcoin. The story of Bitcoin China is a little complex. I would say for the first 2 years, BTC China started in 2011 when we launched. We even coined the term B2B. So the name in Chinese is called B2B. At the time, it was just really early people in the inner circles of the internet who knew about Bitcoin. They're the ones who were buying, selling, mining, and trading Bitcoins. It didn't really come into Chinese vocabulary or Chinese society mindset until 2013. That's when China started picking up on Bitcoin. And this is right after the Cyprus episode where the price jumped from $10, $20 up through the historic price of $265. So that's when it first raised interest level in China. And as soon as that happens, as you know, China, the social media is very active. The internet, people are always keeping on top of everything. There's a lot of good circulation of news and rumors. So when Bitcoin became an asset class to invest in, that's when the piling on action happened. Through late summer, early fall, and eventually culminating in the big increase in price by late fall, by November, December, by early winter. So we saw the price rise a lot. And then what happened was the PBOC, the Chinese regulator, central bank, came in with a sort of Bitcoin policy, Bitcoin regulation statement on December 5th. The idea was to sort of classify Bitcoin as a legitimate virtual good, at the same time not classifying it as a legal currency. So it was no longer to be considered a currency by Chinese law, just only a virtual commodity. And so that threw a lot of media off in terms of whether it was banned or not. Technically, Bitcoin is not banned in China. However, some certain companies are banned from trading in Bitcoin. And the reason is because Bitcoin is not a currency, all financial institutions, banks, for example, are not allowed to touch Bitcoin. Because what are banks allowed to touch? They buy and sell currencies. They use money, right? They don't deal with eggs. They don't deal with apples and oranges. So same thing, they don't deal with Bitcoins. So from that sense, banks are banned or prohibited from touching Bitcoin, just like they don't touch fruits and vegetables. At the same time, companies like ours, we're not a bank, we don't have a banking license. So we are allowed to use and exchange Bitcoin. And consumers are allowed to as well. So just like consumers can buy eggs and fruits and vegetables at the supermarket, consumers get money, financial products at banks. Same thing, they get Bitcoins from BTC China. So that's legitimate. Bitcoin exchanges are pretty much localized. The reason is that by definition, Bitcoin exchanges interface with fiat currencies. And we share the same planet, but the reality is different countries have different currencies. So each country region will have their own specialized Bitcoin exchange that are focused on the local markets, that connect to the local banking system, that utilize their own currency. So for us, we're based in China. That's our core market. We have customers outside of China for sure, but our main market is still China. And at the same time, we know about exchanges in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, in other parts of Asia and other parts of Europe and the United States. We have good relationship with them, but we don't necessarily cooperate on a day-to-day level. The exchanges in China are very competitive. There's several exchanges, and for marketing purposes, I think a lot of them, possibly inflate their volume numbers. And they get away with it because indeed, the trading commissions are zero. So there's a lot of artificial orders, if you will, placed. There's a lot of opportunities for Bitcoin in China besides just an exchange, besides just speculative trading. BTC China is pursuing merchant payments. We're doing merchant payments in China. We're doing online wallets, secure wallets. We're also getting into probably mining pools. So mining is a big deal in China. So there's a lot of demand for a good, honest mining pool. So I think BTC China can provide that. And a lot of also cross-border payments in terms of e-commerce and so on. We're seeing interest in China, the use of Bitcoin as cross-border payments, as merchant payments. The reason is in China, people realize the significance of Bitcoin being the world's first truly global, decentralized sort of asset class and currency at the same time. And what that means is people in China can pay for things in Bitcoin and get things shipped to them from abroad, and vice versa, people abroad can pay for Chinese goods in Bitcoin and have it shipped outside of China into their own country. So Bitcoin, because of its global nature, spanning across countries, cultures, and regions, and governments, and language barriers, Bitcoin is truly a global payment system that is not tied to a specific local currency. It can be used globally. And I think we will see more successful uses of Bitcoin as a global cross-border sort of a currency. About the mining, Bitcoin mining has really affected the price of mining, we think, in this past year, because what's happened is, unlike the early days, mining was done by hobbyists who mine the Bitcoins and hold it in their wallets for keep. These days, Bitcoin mining is done by professionals who have investors behind them, and they buy the latest equipment with ASIC chips. They mine the Bitcoins and they sell it. They sell it right away and cash out. And the reason is it's a cash flow business. Investors demand that and be cashed out, regardless of where Bitcoin prices are. So what that translates to is it's about 3,600 Bitcoins mined a day in total. And that comes out to about, at today's price, comes out to about $500 million, $500 million or so of Bitcoins mined every year. So if all of that, or a large part of that, is sold, then that's selling pressure on a tune of several $100 million a year of selling pressure on Bitcoin prices. So unless there's more uptake in Bitcoin demand, that's a lot of selling pressure each year. So in China, Alibaba is very successful. Alibaba just went IPO recently, and we're seeing, well, first of all, Alibaba is successful in China because they have a hold on the e-commerce. They have Taobao, which is the eBay auction equivalent, and they have also Tmall, which is a B2C shopping site, and they have a lot of other things like a PayPal equivalent, Alipay. So Alibaba is certainly a behemoth, a very, very capable internet company in China. Internet users in China are all tied into the Alibaba system, very much so. We don't see them getting into Bitcoins just yet. Part of the reason is that the central bank has clarified that payment companies are not allowed to touch Bitcoin because Bitcoin is not a currency. So for the now, in the short term, companies like Alipay and other PayPal equivalent payment companies, payment processors, if you will, they probably will not be touching Bitcoin anytime soon. On the other hand, e-commerce companies or auction sites under Alibaba framework, they're probably hesitant to touch Bitcoin as well in the short term. In China, the way it works is it's very much so for payment companies, payment processor, Bitcoin companies, there is a notion of a parallel tracks, of two separate tracks, two rails, if you will, that don't intersect, don't cross. And that's done on purpose. The Chinese regulators often do this for new emerging technologies to keep it on separate rails. And the purpose is to not interfere with an existing regulated framework that has been working well, to not contaminate it in case the new thing brings problems with it. So for a long time, payment companies were on a separate rail than traditional banks. Only recently have they been licensed and work closely with banks. And today what we see is just like peer-to-peer lending, we're seeing Bitcoin being put on a new rail created by the regulators, a new rail that's independent and does not cross into the existing financial order of things, if you will. So payment companies today are on the old rail with the old guards. They deal with money payments. Payment companies, they process merchant transactions like Visa, MasterCard, China Union Pay. So they do that. However, for retailers who want to take Bitcoin, that cannot be handled by the existing payment companies. It has to be handled by new Bitcoin companies like ours. By being on a separate rail, it gives us more room for growth. It gives us more opportunity to incubate our success. So I want to put in a plug for Bitcoin Foundation. I think it's been an amazing few years for Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin Foundation has played a very good role in this. I recognize that Bitcoin Foundation has had some negative publicity lately. Some people are turned off by what the foundation has done. I hope to bring some change to the organization with customers, with our users' feedback, with our members' feedback, if you will. Because Bitcoin Foundation is a membership-driven organization. So every one of you out there, you can become a Bitcoin Foundation member. And when you join as a member, then you have voting rights, speaking rights. You should come to us and tell us how the foundation should be, where it should go. So it really caters to the members of the Bitcoin Foundation.
Follow us on Twitter to be the first to know about new videos from the Protocol.tv.